Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Clean Comfort Zoning presentation. Today with me, I have the Director of Sales for IO HVAC, Jared Diebel, and myself is Jonathan Cramer. I'm the Product Manager for Clean Comfort. So real quick on the Clean Comfort, I know you guys maybe have joined us for our Clean Comfort overview, but I just want to give you guys a reminder that we actually have 6 product families that meet up our Clean Comfort product line. And we're also really excited with our new launches. This year, in 2020, we released a new zoning lineup, which we're going to dive deep into today. But we also released new ventilating dehumidifiers and new evaporative humidifiers. And there is a own training on both of those equipments for the humidity control for Clean Comfort. So check those ones out as well. So why Clean Comfort? Why would you want to sell our zoning equipment or any of our other products over our competition? Well, it goes to easy as we have a very large buying power, but we also have quality relationships. I mean, just in this presentation alone, it's not just me giving you this presentation to help you guys extend your sales, but it's also our vendor as well. So with that relationship, you can see that we are definitely committed to growing the Clean Comfort brand and getting you guys excited about all the products that we have to offer. We have over 8 companies that make up the Clean Comfort product line with over 40 plus products in North America. And I think it's easy to say that we do evolve and we're adding stuff is because we've already released 3 things in 2020, which was a difficult year for a lot of companies, but we hit the ground running and we're going to continue running in 2021. Now, if any of the products that you're going to see, especially in this presentation, or if anything on the opening slide where you saw over 6 product families, if it gives you any interest, check out our website, www.cleancomfort.com, where we have consumer brochures that are directed solely to the homeowner, but we also have specification sheets as well on all of our models that you're going to see today. And they're all PDF downloaded, and so you can just download them and have them available and send them out even after this presentation if you have people in mind that would be perfect for zoning. So let's dive into ways to sell zoning and why you should sell zoning. And one of the easiest things is if we were to walk into your house and we were to flip one light switch, would it light up your whole home? I mean, the obvious answer is no. But again, you don't flush one toilet and it doesn't flush all the toilets in your home, and you don't have the same for your electrical. So what we do have sometimes in applications for houses is you have one thermostat that's supposed to regulate the entire home. And that sounds pretty silly when you have a simple house that you can see on the far right. So here we have natural temperature swings where you're going to have the basement to be at that lower temperature, 69 degrees. And then as you know, heat rises, so the upstairs is going to be naturally at a higher temperature at 76. Well, that thermostat, when it's centrally located, it's trying to satisfy not only the middle floor, but also the top and the basement as well. That kind of seems silly when we have applications now that we can have different thermostats for each one of those zones that we can control them independently. Now, that concept it's not that new, right? If you think about it, our cars are zoned. So you have a passenger temperature and then you have a driver's temperature, and that's more comfortable. But right now, especially in 2020, and who knows what 2021 is going to look like, but we are spending more time than ever at our house. So why should we not be comfortable in the house that we're in? With homeowners, there's easy ways, not only just for your comfort and having that ease of system, but is there areas of your house that are too hot and too cold? Maybe that house that you just saw is a very simple and a very easy application to sell it to as well. But let's say maybe you have a 1-story house, but you don't go to certain areas of the house. You could still use zoning for that, and it's still beneficial because maybe you don't go to those other zones as often as you do the primary zones. For example, that is one way you can even see some energy savings is because you're not running the system to satisfy that whole area of the house, but you're also just satisfying that zone that maybe you spend majority of your time. Now, obviously in 2020, everyone's home, everyone's here, but who knows what 2021 looks like. And let's say kids are going back to school. They're spending 8 to 10 hours a day at school, and maybe you don't even go upstairs or no one's home. Well, we can maybe not satisfy that zone. Maybe we can keep that at a higher temperature and just satisfy the zones where someone's working. As you can see, energy savings. Now, obviously, you want to be a little bit careful when you want to say that they can save you energy savings, just because there is obviously a chance where this homeowner lives in Houston, Texas, and they want to be at 68 degrees in all 3 zones. Well, for that case, you're running your system just as often, if not more, than you were doing when you just did not have zoning. So you just want to be a little careful and explain to them the areas and ways it can actually save them. For contractors, it's just going to be adding more to your bottom line. And it's also an easy way to get into IAQ pretty easily into the homeowner by saying, this is a small step. We also have other options as well. So you're getting that full IAQ package, and that's really popular right now in today's world. What's cool about our Clean Comfort product lines for both of our premium and our economy versions is that we accept any thermostat, which is directly in line with what Goodman and Amana are doing right now with the Comfort Bridge product. So with Comfort Bridge, you can use any thermostat, any 24-volt thermostat. Well, same goes for our Clean Comfort. We're trying to put the thermostat and the decisions of that to the homeowner. We're not telling you if you're going to use our zoning equipment, you have to then go buy a $400 or $500 thermostat. Any 24-volt single works. So as you see, Ecobee, Nest, Brayburn, Honeywell, all those work perfectly with those. They can be programmed, not programmed. The only thing that matters is for every zone that you have. For example, if you bought a 3-zone system, you need three thermostats, and we recommend them to be the same brand. So 3 Ecobees, 3 ProStats, what have you. Talking a little bit more about that ComfortNet versus Comfort Bridge, as you know, that's a whole different presentation. I recommend you guys going to check that out because there is going to be a topic on that for the summit these past 3 days. But ComfortNet was kind of our older technology. What happened there was all the staging, all the algorithms on the fan speeds, all of that was configured on the actual CTK04. Well, now with Comfort Bridge, all of that is handled inside of the system itself. For example, the furnace and the air handlers are now handling the staging, the timing, and the fan speed internally. So with the CTK04, the thermostat controlled all that. With Comfort Bridge, all of that is in the furnace and air handlers and indoor units. So that is one of the big difference with Comfort Bridge is that it's doing its own thinking and it's learning and the algorithms all based off of itself. So when it comes to Goodman and Amana, the solution that is perfect for your zoning solution is always going to be the Clean Comfort one moving forward. And we're really excited about that, especially with all the launches of Comfort Bridge. We're almost going to be solely using Comfort Bridge in 2021. If it's not already, it's already out for the new air handlers. So what does a normal zoning system look like? I think a lot of you guys that are probably joining this call, you're very familiar with the ways to regulate static pressure. There's two. You could use the barometric or you can use an electric. At the end of the day, you have to manage the static pressure whether we want to or not, or we have the space to or not. Because if you think about it, it's going to be as simple as just having a hose. When you turn on the water and the hose is flowing, it's just nice and easy, just like you see in the left. Everything's working, everything's going exactly how you want it to. But let's say you see a loved one walking by you and it's a hot summer day and you think, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and spray them, but this hose won't reach. Well, there's only one way for the water to get to your loved one, and that's for you to block the nozzle. When you block the nozzle, you're creating pressure, and then the water only has a very small area to go through with that diameter, so it's going to shoot out even further. Well, that simple technique and that simple thought process sounds silly, but let's apply that same logic to now our HVAC and zoning equipment. So let's say that we have a 3-zone system that we just set up in this brand new house with our homeowner, and they're excited about it. And we're now going to set it up, but we did not install a bypass. So this is for not having a bypass, not having anywhere to regulate that static pressure. We just installed the zoning equipment and said, hey, it is, I'm not going to worry about it. As you can see, if everyone wants 72 degrees, everyone's happy, everyone's calm. As you can see, it's kind of just like the same as that hose, right? It's just going through the hose, nice and easy. There's no complaints because there's no one walking by. I don't want to spray with water. And same goes with the zoning equipment. Everyone wants 72, so everyone's relaxed and comfortable. But let's say zone 1 says, hey, you know what? I'm good at 72. I don't want that. I want it to be at 74. It's a little cold in here. So now we only have 2 zones calling out of the 3-zone system. As you can see, the red arrows are picking up. They're getting a little bit faster. Maybe the people in zone 2 and 3 are noticing that's a little bit louder when it's running. It's uncomfortable. It's something doesn't sound right like it did before I had my not having zoning equipment. But then so zone 3 said, you know what, this is just a little too loud and stuff. I'm just going to shut it off. I'm good at 74. I don't really need to be satisfied right now. So now zone 2 is like, well, I still want 72 degrees. So now those dampers are completely closed. We are blocking airflow from going from either zone 1 or zone 3, and only zone 2 is getting airflow. So can you imagine what it would feel like if you were in zone 2 right now? I'm sure if you had papers on the desk, they would be moving, they'd be flying around. You'd be hearing a lot of noise that you're not used to hearing. And then what are the homeowner going to do? They're going to call the contractor, say, hey, something's wrong with my system. It never sounds like a bat out of hell. Stuff like that is just going to be happening when you have just one way for the air to go, and it's going through one zone at a time. Well, that's not the only thing. That's just what the homeowner is going to sense. Obviously, they're not going to go up there in their attic and pull it out. Maybe they will, but they're going to pull it out and be like, oh, there's all kinds of stuff wrong. The coil can freeze up. You're going to be tripping your limits. Obviously it's going to be super noisy. It's going to be damaging the ductwork. There's just a lot of issues when it comes to static pressure. So this is just what happens when we don't have a way to regulate static pressure. So with our new Clean Comfort product line, we have a way, an easy, simple way to do that. And I'm going to pass it off to Jared.
Okay, Jonathan, thank you very much. You can control the PowerPoint here. All right, again, this is Jared Diebel, Director of Sales for the factory here. So excited everybody could join us today, and we're gonna go over the different types of panels, the different options that we offer, and then we're gonna get into some of the technical details. So first of all, I wanna start off by saying that we offer two versions of these panels, so or zone control systems. So Jonathan had mentioned earlier about the more premium option and then the economy line. So that's going to specifically be the premium option is going to be the bypass free or ESP, which we're going to jump into first. Then further on in the presentation, we're going to talk about the more economy or traditional type zone control system, and we'll go over those panels and some of the features and benefits as well. One of the first things to keep in mind is that these zone control panels are fully universal with regard to any what I would call traditional type system. So as Jonathan had mentioned, the way this works with the Comfort Bridge systems, it just works on just a regular 24-volt signal. So whether it be a Goodman system, a Mana system, or a different type of equipment manufacturer, a good rule of thumb to keep that so long as that equipment does not require a communicating thermostat, then it's most likely going to be compatible with the Clean Comfort zone control system. Okay, so first of all, on the bypass-free zone control system and on the standard zone control system, we have three different panel options. We're going to have the two-zone panel, which is just the more rudimentary type single-stage panel. Then we're going to have two different versions of the three-zone panel. We have both multi-stage versions. One's going to be a heat-cool multi-stage for a conventional setup, and then the other one's going to be the heat pump or dual fuel series. And then the third version of the panel that we have is the 6-zone zone control panel. Now you can add an expansion panel, which adds 3 additional zones to the 6-zone panel. You can add up to 2 of those to the 6-zone panel, which means that we can offer a zone control system with the Clean Comfort line anywhere from 2 to 12 zones. So if you can see here in the picture, all of these zone control systems we're going to offer in a kit. So we make sure that you're going to get everything that you need out in the field specifically for that job. So it's going to obviously include your zone control panel, your transformer, so you can have it on its own isolated circuit, the static pressure sensor, which is going to come with all the bypass-free zone control systems, and then a discharge temperature sensor if you would like to make use of that to trip the high and low limits in the system. One thing to take note of is that between both the dampers and the panels, we have an unmatched warranty. I mean, 10-year warranty on the zone control panels. We know our product's bulletproof, and we have a warranty that's going to back that up. And same thing with the dampers. They're very well built. I get a lot of great praise from contractors who get an opportunity to install these dampers that in comparison to some of our competitors out there, that they're just a good build and sturdy damper. Additionally, we have a BLEMO actuators on those 3-wire dampers, which if you're not familiar, they are the gold standard of actuators in the industry today. So we offer these in virtually any shape or size imaginable. I'll say that our standard versions on a round, anywhere from a 4-inch round up to about a 20-inch round, typically we have in stock ready to go. Anything beyond that, we get into specialty sizes, but we can make them as big as you'd like. Same thing with the rectangular, typically anywhere from like a 10 by 8 all the way up to say a 24 by 22 are going to be our more standard type sizes. And then we can do specialty or more commercial dampers that can be as large as the desk that you may be sitting at. So let's talk about how ESP works. So in order for it to be a bypass-free system, we have to do something to regulate static pressure. So as you see here, the special sauce lies in the static pressure sensor. So again, on a traditional or old school type zone control system, it's pretty common that you might have a section of ductwork that's going to be installed from your supply air right back to your return air. And we'll talk about a little bit further here in a bit, but like Jonathan had mentioned with the barometric or electronic bypass dampers, typically you'd have that installed in that section of ductwork. So you'd either set it via means of a weighted arm, or you'd set a static pressure sensor there on electronic type bypass, and you'd have to set it to where when you reach a specific level of static pressure or resistance in the system, it would open up that damper and we'd start automatically bleeding air that we have already conditioned straight from the supply right back into the return. Well, first of all, that's not very efficient. We're taking air that we've already conditioned and then we're reconditioning it. And when we start to actually bypass too much air, not only is it not efficient, but we can run into issues where we're freezing up coils, tripping limits, and in extreme situations, even doing things such as cracking heat exchangers. So our ESP system completely eliminates the need for bypass. Furthermore, it's a great value to the contractors, and any of you out there that are watching this presentation now that have had the experience in installing a traditional bypass, I'm sure you're nodding your head and saying that anytime that you don't have to do that, it's a good day. First of all, it saves on time, money, and the effort in having to go around and take static pressure readings and getting that bypass damper set just right. Well, the ESP system, again, you get the static pressure sensor. We actually have, by our studies, determined that at 0.35 inches of water column, which is where we map how we monitor static pressure, systems start to get noisy. So we actually preset our static pressure sensor from the factory at 0.35 inches of water column. However, it is fully adjustable, so the technician can adjust it up or down if they'd like to, but we're simply saying that is where that threshold is. So the way it works, let's go back and say like our 3-zone system. So let's say zone 1 calls and zones 2 and 3 are satisfied, so they're coming back close. So again, like the example Jonathan was given earlier, you know, zone 1's open. We're pushing a lot of air into that specific zone, zones 2 or 3. Those dampers are coming close, static pressure increases. It's just like putting your thumb over that garden hose. We're pushing all that air in one specific area. And then we could reach that static pressure threshold. So if and when we reach that threshold above 0.35 inches of water column, we're going to take those non-calling zone control dampers and we're going to modulate them open. Now, as soon as we drop back below the threshold, those non-calling zone dampers are going to actually hold that specific position for just under a minute. So long as static pressure does not increase again, the dampers will then come back closed and the system will run business as usual. Now, there are a lot of variables involved, but on our studies on most 3-zone systems, we're talking about just about 6 to 8% that those non-calling zone control dampers will open to alleviate that pressure. And we also give you options on the panel where you can specifically adjust which dampers you'd like to be able to offer the zone bypass option on. So as an example, this kind of gives you an idea with ESP. Again, zone 2 is your zone calling. We're pushing all of our air to zone 2. However, zone 1 damper, zone 3 damper, we're going to go ahead and just crack them ever so slightly to relieve some of that pressure. Now, again, we have 3 different types of this panel, both in the ESP and in the standard version. First of all, you're going to have the 2-zone panel. Again, this is your more rudimentary type panel. We see these in multifamily type applications, small zoning type applications, but your 3-zone panels are going to be the most common. 2-zone panel, again, 10-year warranty. You're going to get the kit, everything that you need in there. If we're going to look at the nomenclature here, clean comfort, that's going to stand, or CC stands for clean comfort. Then of course you have 2 for a 2-zone system. HC stands for heating, cooling, or heat cool. And then you have ESP that stands for electronic static pressure. And we put dash kit on there just so you know you're getting everything that you need in that zone control kit. Now, when we jump over to our 3-zone options, again, we have 2 different versions here, both multi-stage versions. So we have CC3, Clean Comfort 3-zone, Heat Cool multi-stage, which is your conventional version, and then ESP again for bypass free, and kit. Okay, and then on our dual fuel or heat pump type version, it's again CC3, HPS for heat pump series, ESP bypass free system, and then of course you get the kit, everything that's going to be involved there. Now these 2 panels here side by side look insanely similar. There's just very small features on there. They're a little bit different to differentiate the heat pump or dual fuel type panel from the heat cool multi-stage conventional. And I'll run over those here in just a moment. So this is more of a close-up of what that panel is going to look like. First of all, again, you're going to get that transformer in the kit. So we put it, and we always recommend installing the zone control system on its own isolated transformer, just so you don't have the opportunity to where if you're power stealing from another transformer, that you might run into a position that you're overloading a transformer, which as we all know can start to have a system act a little wonky. So hot and common here, we're going to power up that zone control system. And then zone control thermostats are going to be here on the left-hand side of the panel. And then each correlating zone damper is going to be right there on that same terminal strip. So first of all, we have a little Nest thermostat wired up here. Again, you have your hot and common, your W for heat, your Y1, Y2 for first and second stage cooling, G for your fan, OB for your reversing valve, and then you're going to have power closed, common, and power open for your 3-wire damper. Now, one thing that I will make mention of here on this ESP panel, you have to have 3-wire dampers for the ESP function to work. However, sometimes I've had technicians call me up and say, hey, you know, we have one of your ESP panels on a truck, and, you know, we ran into, maybe it's an old Honeywell system that has 2-wire existing dampers, and, you know, the panel has gone bad and we need a replacement panel. Well, you can actually use the ESP panel as a standard zone control panel. You're just not going to install that static pressure sensor. So you can actually use it on 2-wire dampers. When we get into our economy version of our zone control panels, you can use 2 or 3-wire dampers on those as well. But again, you have to have 3-wire dampers and the static pressure sensor installed to use the ESP version. Okay, so zone 1, zone 2 stat, zone 3 stat, again, correlating zone dampers are going to be right there. We have a couple other features on this panel. First of all, you got some dip switches up here at the top. That's to set the high limit. So on the 2 and 3 zone panels, we have a preset low limit. And when I say low limit, I'm referring to discharge air. It's just a safety that we build in. You don't have to use that feature, but you can. So the preset on the low limit is going to be 43 degrees. No adjustment needed there. And then on the high limit, we give you the opportunity to adjust it if you'd like to. Using these dip switches, you can adjust it anywhere from 130 to 160 degree discharge air when you're in heating mode. If you want to make use of those features, you simply are going to install this, just a 10K ohm discharge temperature sensor. You're going to wire it right back to these DA terminals on the panel. The next thing you're going to see here, again, this is my heat pump version or dual fuel version. We have these 2 setting switches, or these 2 potentiometers. So what these are for are high and low balance point settings. So if you install the outdoor temperature sensor, again, completely optional, it's going to wire right back to these OT terminals. You can use that feature. And what these are specifically for is locking out the heat pump when it's most efficient and least efficient. So for example, low balance point, I might say, hey, at 20 degrees, my heat pump is no longer as efficient as my electronic or fossil fuel backup heat. So when we opt for second stage, I'm going to automatically opt for that conventional or fossil fuel backup heat. On the flip side of that, we can set a high balance point where we say, hey, anytime we're above this temperature, we're only going to use our heat pump because it's most efficient. So let's just say, for sake of an example, I'm going to set that at 35 degrees Fahrenheit. So at that point, anytime we reach or exceed 35 degree Fahrenheit outside, we're only going to use that heat pump for first or second stage. Here's just a little bit more of a close-up on the panel. Again, you got your hot and common W, Y1, Y2, G, and then OB for the reversing valve. And then of course, Y2, it's gonna convert over to W2 when we switch into heating mode. So on the zone bypass, I mentioned earlier that we give you the option to shut off specific zones. Sometimes people say or ask the question, well, if you're bleeding air into zones, are you going to over-condition specific spaces? The response is on 99% of systems, no. And the reason being is at 0.35 inches of water column, and we're cracking those dampers typically about 6 to 8%, the amount of air or pressure we're leaving is minimal. It's not like a zone that's calling where we're pushing in a good amount of airflow into that space. However, depending on the system, you could run into an opportunity where you could set that up to where you could actually bypass too much air in a specific really small zone. So I always give the example of my house. My son's nursery, it's a very small bedroom. It's a child's nursery, and then when you look at the master bedroom, you look at the spare bedroom and then the living area, those zones are much bigger. So for that reason, if you have a very temperature sensitive area, like the zone in my son's room, you can actually shut off that specific zone. All you got to do is take this little jumper switch and pick it up. There's actually 2 pins here, and you can set it to the off position. And you can set it that way for any zone that you would like. So when you're using the ESP zone control system, any zone, so long as it has this little jumper set to the on position, is going to bypass air whenever we reach that static pressure threshold. But any zone you do not want that feature enabled on, you simply just set it to the off position. Okay, now a little bit more of a close-up on the damper. We'll go over some of the specs on the dampers in just a moment. But first of all, I often get questions on, well, how many dampers can we put on a specific zone? Well, it comes down to the transformer. We offer a 40 VA transformer. When it comes to the stat and the zone control panel, they're only drawing just a little bit of power there. So you're going to get most of your VA draw coming from the dampers. However, on a 3-wire actuator, they do not require nearly as much power as like what a 2-wire actuator does. The reason being is because of the actual physics of the motor. I explain it more so like if you can imagine a digital clock or an analog clock versus a wind-up clock. So a 3-wire motor is what we call 2-position floating point actuator, which means we power it closed or power it open. So we can turn and manipulate that motor to stop those damper blades wherever we would like. On the flip side of that, if you're comparing that to a 2-wire motor, a 2-wire motor has a spring that it works against. So when we put 24 volts to a 2-wire motor, it just powers one way. So normally it's power open, spring close, or power close, spring open. So what that means is that motor has to meet and exceed the resistance of that spring all the way till it meets the end of its travel. And then you shut the power off to that specific damper, and then that spring returns it back to place. So therefore, the actual physics of a 2-wire motor require a lot more torque, a lot more resistance. Well, so to bring that all in, a Belimo actuator that we use here on our Clean Comfort Series dampers, they actually have about a 2.5 VA draw per zone damper. So we typically say, rule of thumb, you don't really want to exceed 30 VA per zone, 30 VA draw per zone. You can in specific instances, but we always suggest getting engineering involved if you're going to exceed that. So at 2.5 VA per damper, 30 VA per zone, we can put quite a few dampers on a specific zone. So oftentimes you're never going to need to put more than 4, 5, 6 dampers, but we can get upwards of 10 to 15 dampers per zone. And those can be what we call daisy chained or wired in series, which means if this is my primary zone 1 damper and I wanted to put several other either round or rectangular zone dampers in there, I can actually daisy chain straight from one motor to the next. Now, when it comes to installing these dampers, it says right here on the motor, and there's correlating numbers on these terminals, which wire is going to need to land where. So it says number 1 is common, number 2 is power close, and number 3 is power open. We make it very simple and put that right on our zone control panel as well. So of course you have common right here, you have power open right here, and power close right there. This little black button, sometimes people ask, what is that? That's a clutch. If you, for some reason, lost power to the system and you needed to move that zone damper open for short term, you just push in that little clutch and you can move the zone damper. Also, if you ever have a situation where you need to switch out a motor, you just have this little shaft collar, you loosen these two, I think they're 5/16 nuts, and loosen them right up. You slide that motor right on and off. It's very simple to do. And lastly, this orange ring right here, that's a position indicator. So since this orange ring is pointing in this direction, I know that it is directly parallel with my damper, so I know that damper is in the open position. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the specifics on the kits. So first of all, excuse me, that's my slide back there. One thing that's unique about our zone control panels is we actually offer ventilation mode, or we offer the priority to have independent fan control by zone. So what does that mean? Well, just like we zone heating and cooling calls and we open dampers where we want to push the air, we do the same thing with ventilation. So typically in a zone control system, we recommend you run continuous fan. And what that means is when all zones are satisfied on a traditional zone control system, all those dampers are just going to go to the open position. When we're running ventilation mode, we're running the fan in low speed, we're slowly just ventilating air all throughout that zone system. Well, what we do is we take it to another level. We say, well, why not prioritize where we want to ventilate? So it's a very simple way that you can do so. It's set through the actual thermostat. So let's say zone 1 is my master bedroom. Zone 2 is a spare bedroom, and then zone 3 is my living area. Well, I spend most of my time in the living area, so I want to ventilate in my living area. So whenever all zones are satisfied, I want to prioritize my ventilation towards that area. Very simply, I would set the zone thermostat in my living area to the fan mode to on or continuous, and then I go to the bedrooms, I would set the fan mode to auto. So what that tells the zone control system or our zone panel is when all zones are satisfied, we're going to go ahead and open the damper to the zone that we have determined we've set the fan mode to on or continuous, and then we're going to close the dampers in the zones that we've set the fan mode to auto. So you can get really creative with that feature, and I've talked to a lot of contractors that have done so, especially when you start adding in ventilation systems, UV lights, electronic air cleaners, things of that nature. Okay, LED status notification. You're going to see everything that's going on with the zone control system. Every zone that's calling, if a zone's bypassing air, every sensor that's installed, whether you have power to the panel. We have LEDs on our panel that's going to tell you everything that's functioning. So if you ever need to call into our tech support, they can easily walk you through that and make sure the system's functioning exactly as it should be. We have short cycle protection. So just like most thermostats, the last thing we want to do is run into a situation where we're short cycling our equipment because that can cause a lot of wear and tear. So we have a 3-minute short cycle protection built into our zone panels. It's not going to allow the zone control system to just keep calling back and forth and kicking on the equipment. Again, adjustable high and low limit. We talked about that as far as discharge air temperature is concerned. The high limit is adjustable between 130 and 160 degrees. The low limit is preset at 43 degrees. And lastly, it requires a 3-wire damper for the ESP series. So when we get into our 6-zone panel, it gets a little bit more technical. We start to get into more light commercial type applications. So we've packed a lot of things into the 6-zone panel. First of all, a few key features. Again, we can add 3-zone expansion panels, which can expand the panel up 3 zones to 9 zones, and then we add 3 more up to 12 zones. We have all the same features that I just mentioned on the 2- and 3-zone control panels, but we've actually enhanced a few of those as well. So first of all, capacity control. So just like the Comfort Bridge system can upstage the system, the multi-stage system, without the need of a multi-stage thermostat, our zone control panel can do that as well. So although it may not be needed for when you're installing on a Comfort Bridge type system, any other type application, if you ever would have a multi-stage piece of equipment and you wanted to use single stage thermostats, you can. So capacity control is just a set of dip switches where we can set a minimum number of zones calling. Whenever we reach that threshold, we're automatically going to upstage the equipment. On the flip side of that, we have an upstage timer. It's just a simple yes or no. You can turn it on or off through the display. And it's a 10-minute upstage timer, which means if any zone or zones are calling for 10 minutes or more, we'll automatically upstage the equipment. Again, totally optional. The logic in the 6-zone panel changes a little bit. So when we're talking about our 2 to 3 zone panels, we have first call priority, which means if a heating call comes in and then 5 seconds later a cooling call comes in, we're going to take care of that heating call that came in first, then we're going to go over to the cooling call. Well, we can change that with the 6-zone panel. So first of all, we do a voting system or majority wins when it's set to its standard mode. So that means if you get 3 heating calls and 2 cooling calls, we're going to take care of heating first. However, when we get into like commercial applications, you might have a volatile type zone like a server room where cooling needs to take priority. So we can actually switch it to cooling priority, just set on a dip switch there on the panel to where if a cooling call comes in, we're going to make sure we satisfy that before we go to any heating calls. We have humidification and dehumidification pass-through on zone 1 stat, which means if you have a humidifier or dehumidifier, you can land those terminals right on, or excuse me, land those wires right on our zone control panel from the stat and then out to the equipment. It's just a pass-through. It doesn't change the humidifier or dehumidifier. It just sends on the signal from the thermostat. It makes it easier for this contractor to be able to consolidate all that wiring in one place. You can put a night stat on the 6-zone panel. And then there's a couple other unique features such as the LCD display here. Comes with a 75 VA transformer, and then you can do an outdoor temperature sensor, an indoor temperature sensor, and a return air sensor, or excuse me, supply air, return air, and outdoor temperature sensor, which you get a readout of all those on the display. So a little bit closer of a look. Again, here's all of our zone thermostats. I mentioned you had that dehume pass-through on zone 1. That can actually be passed straight through to the equipment here on our unit terminals. And then one thing that's notably different is we kind of ran out of room here on the 6-zone panel. It's got a lot more going on than our 3 zones. So the zone damper for each zone is actually on the other side of the panel. So you have zone 1 and then zone 1 damper, zone 2 damper, and so on and so forth. You're going to power it up and wire the thermostats up just like our 2 and 3 zone panels. Again, indicator LEDs. So all these little white LEDs here, those are all the zone damper LEDs. So what that means is if, let's say zone 1 and 2 are calling, those are going to be illuminated green, solid green. I know those zones are calling when I see those LEDs illuminated. Let's say zone dampers 3 through 6 are blinking green. Well, then I know those zone dampers are modulating open to relieve static pressure. This is where the night stat's going to install. If you decide to do a night stat, SPS terminals for your static pressure sensor, discharge air sensor, return air sensor, and then if you want to do an outdoor temperature sensor as well for a heat pump, you can. We also have fault terminals for a heat pump. So you're going to get a readout that outdoor temperature, the return air, and discharge air temperature right here on the display. It also gives you that option that I showed you on the 3-zone panel where you can set a little jumper to turn zones on and off. We took that off of next to the zone thermostat, and we actually built that into the display on the 6-zone, so you can just select which zones are going to do the bypass free option. And if you enhance it to a 9 or 12-zone system, it automatically brings those zones up. There's no additional programming or anything like that needed. Additionally, you can set your high and low discharge air limits all through the display. You can turn your upstage timer on and off if you'd like to. Just a close-up of those dip switches. This is how you're going to configure the system. Purge, that's one that's on both the 2, 3, and 6-zone panels, or all the panels. That's a 60-second purge of the air out of the ductwork for a zone that has finished calling. You can turn that on or off. So for example, if I have one zone that just finished up with a heating call and then a cooling call comes in, well, if I have the purge on, then I'm going to go ahead and for 60 seconds purge all that heated air out of the ductwork into the zone that was calling for heating before I switch over to cooling and start conditioning the cooling space. This is that capacity control that we talked about. So you can set a minimum number of zones that are going to be calling before you upstage the equipment. And then on some equipment, there's a DSBK or dehume or hume terminal. And this is where we can manipulate this fan speed to change humidification. Couple more features on the dampers. Again, power open, power close, 2-position floating point actuators, BLEMOs, 2.5 VA rating, 60-second stroke, which means when I put 24 volts to that damper, it takes 60 seconds to open and close it. Now, we had a question the other day. Someone said, well, hey, if there's an existing 3-wire damper and I want to stick an ESP panel on it, can I? And I said, absolutely. So long as it's a 2-position floating point, especially if you know it's a BLEMO actuator. Timing's irrelevant because we're only looking, the logic that's built into the panel does not require anything specific as far as the timing's concerned. The only time we've ever ran into an issue is the way a carrier infinity actuator works. It's a little bit different. So if you run into that type of situation, give us a call on tech support and we will walk you through what you will need to do. Again, from 6-inch to 16-inch round, we can do larger, and then from 6x6 all the way up to 36x32 on the rectangular. So as far as nomenclature, clean comfort, 3-wire, you're going to have, let's say, a 10x8. That's going to be a side mount damper. If I want a bottom mount where it's going to be mounted on the 10-inch side, I would use the part number CC-3-wire-1008-BM for bottom mount. So on all the standard dampers, you can always assume that the motor is going to be mounted on the smaller dimension. So again, on a 10x8, the motor is going to be mounted on the 8-inch side. On a 10x8-BM for bottom mount, it's going to be mounted on the 10-inch side. Okay, now this is our economy zone control panels and kits. Again, they're all going to come in kits just like the ESP. You're going to have the 2-zone, the 3-zone panels, and then the 6-zone expandable up to 12. We also offer the 2-wire more standard type dampers with those zone control systems, but you can put 3-wire dampers on those systems. The most notable feature between the ESP and the economy line is that you need to regulate static pressure with the economy line by means of a bypass damper or some other means, because you're not going to have that static pressure sensor. A lot of the same features and benefits. So you're going to have a high-low temperature sensor preset at 43 degrees, adjustable between 130 and 160 degrees for discharge air. You're going to get that 30 VA transformer. We're doing a 5-year warranty on the panel and then a 5-year warranty on the damper. So instead of a BLEMO, we have a Hansen actuator on there. So it's again, either power open spring return or power closed spring open actuator. These require a little bit more VA. So they require closer to 10 VA per zone damper. So typically 2 to 3 zone dampers, you're going to daisy chain together in a specific zone by rule of thumb. Again, we can offer all the same sizes that we can with the 3-wire actuators, and most notably, they are completely universal, just like our 3-wire dampers. When it comes to Aprilaire or Honeywell or EWC, they're all completely universal and interchangeable. So if you run out to a job and you find a damaged Honeywell damper, 2-wire damper, 24-volt damper on a system, you can use one of our Clean Comfort dampers to replace it with. Flip side with the panel. If you have existing Honeywell dampers and you want to swap out the panel with the Clean Comfort panel, you can do so. EWC, they're more known for the 3-wire dampers. You can use our Clean Comfort 3-wire dampers to change in and out with theirs. Fully universal, so it opens up a lot more market options for our contractors and distributor friends out there. So when you're regulating static pressure on the traditional type system, you're going to want to use either electronic or barometric type bypass damper. Again, that's traditionally going to be installed right here in a section of your bypass duct, and you're going to make sure that you're going to set either that weighted blade or that static pressure sensor for the electronic bypass damper to alleviate static pressure at a specific threshold. And then the Clean Comfort, the 2-zone kit is our more rudimentary kit. It's like I said, on multifamily projects, we see these more so. They're just a single stage panel, more economically friendly there as far as the budget is concerned. However, the 3-zone control panels are by far our biggest movers. And then again, we offer the heat cool multi-stage and then the heat pump series, just like we do with the ESP type panels. The biggest features that you're going to notice, or the biggest differences you're going to notice, again, there's not going to be those SPS terminals to install that static pressure sensor. One feature I had not mentioned when we were going over ESP is we do offer 20-minute timeshare. It's built into our panel, which it's that way with all of our zone control panels. And what that is that if you have a situation where a zone is calling for heating and then maybe another zone or 2 zones are calling for cooling, well, maybe the stat in that zone calling for heating is broken, or maybe one of the kids went and messed with it and turned it up as high as it could go. So the system's just not satisfying that zone. Well, after 20 minutes of attempting to satisfy that zone, our panel will drop the call, go over and satisfy the other calls that came in, and then come back to the call that's needing to be satisfied, which is great for, apartment type or duplex type situations that are going to be zoned. So you never run into a situation where some zone is not going to get the air that it's calling for. And then lastly, again, you have that 6-zone control panel. The biggest feature difference you're going to notice between the economy and the ESP line, outside of not having that electronic static pressure control, is that you're not going to have that LCD display on there. Some of those features I mentioned, such as the upstage timer, are going to be based on switches there on the board. Lastly, on these 2-wire dampers, so in a zoning type situation, your damper is typically going to be a power closed spring open. The reason we use a power closed spring open in zoning is because if we ever lost power to the panel, we want it to spring to the open position because we wouldn't want any zone being shut off. On the flip side of it, if you want to use one of our Clean Comfort dampers as a ventilation type damper, you can set it up in a power open spring close or power open spring return application, to where it's going to, if it loses power, come back into the closed position, so you don't have an open hole from the outside of a home or living space that's going to allow air just to come in at any time. There is a position indicator on the damper. They're insanely easy to remove and switch over. So if I need to change this round damper from power open spring return to a power closed spring open, there's this little Allen head. I loosen that up. I slide the damper motor off. I take it to the other side of the damper and I slide it on there. There's a little rubber grommet you got to remove. Okay, and thank you for everybody's attention. I'm going to hand it back over to Jonathan now.
All right, thank you guys. So as you can see, we had talked about the panel cross-reference. This is just kind of overview of what Jared was able to go over, and it's a high level. So I appreciate that. And so just kind of really just to wrap up our technical support, any one of our products that you're going to see is going to be 83340 clean. That number, whether it's a humidifier, dehumidifier, filter, doesn't matter. Call that number if you ever have technical support. And it's a hotline that'll step through, and one of the options, I believe 5, would be zoning controls. And we're going to put you in direct line with IOHVAC for their technical based support, all based in the US. So these guys, as you know, they're very knowledgeable, very experienced, so they'll be able to help you through with any of the questions or installs that you have for your job. And training support, this video will also be on demand on the website that you guys have access to now, being a part of this training. So it's on demand. Go ahead and click it again if you want to rewatch it or send it out to someone that you think would benefit from this. Again, if you want to check out our website, we have the spec sheets and the consumer brochures ready to go and downloadable in PDF form today. So Reminder, we have a large group and a large net when it comes to IAQ that we can cast out in the marketplace with Clean Comfort, with our filtration, humidification, dehumidification, ventilation, purification, and now zoning. So we're very excited about our zoning lineup, giving us that perfect platform for everything that you have and a perfect solution for both Goodman and Amana with the Comfort Bridge technology. So thank you guys. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.